Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're looking at a pretty fun Wednesday night slate here. In this one, we have plenty of value to look at with the Indiana Pacers hosting the Orlando Magic, coming off a pretty big loss, the Magic, to the Bulls recently. So we'll take a look at some of this stuff. Nate has some pretty good stuff here and on his article on playpicks.com with some best bets and player props in there for you as well. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page, as we've got a couple other videos up for you today, including our player props video where we started the week. Another nice week to start 7-2 so far, so we'll look to stay hot with those. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Pacers are now -3.5, where it opened at -5. I'm actually liking the spread more than the total, which opened around 221 and has been bet up to 226. Certainly agree with that over being the action, but we might be getting a little too high to love that pick. And there are 8 other games tonight. Looking at the spreads there, we got Wizards +10 at the Sixers. We'll see if Joel Embiid returns. Bradley Beal will be out for Washington. The Hornets are +6 now at Boston, which has been playing really well, and that totals up to 225. Boston has the best defensive rating over their last 4, so might want to go under there. Grizzlies now -3.5 at the Knicks. That's the other game we break down in an episode for you today. The Cavs are -5 in Houston without Darius Garland, though. The Thunder +12 at Dallas. Nuggets are +3 at Utah after getting blown out in Minnesota last night. The Nets are -4 at Sacramento after losing in Phoenix. And the Blazers +4 at the Lakers, who will be without LeBron James again. Look, I know this isn't the most exciting game on the slate. The Magic are dead last in the East. The Pacers are third from last, but I feel it's a good opportunity to make some money because the Pacers are a little bit better than their recent results would indicate. Just by glancing at it, I feel like they have the hardest schedule of any Eastern Conference team since Christmas. They've almost exclusively played good teams. A lot of games against Chicago and Charlotte, and then a lot of West Coast road trip games, and they've been shorthanded that whole time. They're going to be shorthanded again tonight. No Malcolm Brogdon. Sabonis is in COVID protocols. Guys are coming out quicker from those protocols, but I don't know if he'll be back after being placed on Monday. And no Miles Turner, which is why you're seeing so much action on the over for good reason, because their defensive rating jumps 7 points per 100 possessions without Turner. And their offense jumps 7 points in terms of points per game to 114.5. I definitely like the Pacers over here, which was 113.5, now probably 114.5, exactly what they're averaging in their last 7 games, where they're suddenly up to 6th in pace. They've gone over in 6 of their 7 games, and they're number 29 in defensive rating to allow plenty of production on the other side. The key thing is Orlando's on a back-to-back here, having just given up 126 in Chicago. In their last 7 games, they've suddenly jumped to 7th in pace and gone 5-1-1 to the over. But I really just like the Pacers to win this game and to do it by at least 4 points for sure. Orlando's still not a good team, even though they've scored 3 wins, kind of surprisingly in that stretch. They're still 25th in rebounding rate during that span, and Indy is 3rd. They're scoring the 6th highest percentage of paint points. Indy allows the 6th most paint points, so that's, again, good for the over. But there's more in the direction of Indy scoring than Orlando scoring. Certainly, Indy's getting the 2nd most free throws. Orlando's allowing the 2nd most free throws. Again, this is a 7-game sample. Indy's 9th in 3-point shooting. Orlando's 27th in 3-point defense. The Pacers obviously just have a little more talent, first to say the least. The Magic tend to cover on the road when they're big enough underdogs. They're 16-13 against the spread, but they're 6-23 straight up on the road. They're 1-9 straight up on back-to-backs, and they lose those road games by an average of 7.2 points per game. So you're not really expecting them to cover 3 here, to say the least. And they lose these back-to-backs by an average of 8 points per game. But all is to say that I trust Karis LeVert as the best player on the floor by far here to basically lead the Pacers at home past a team of rookies that are coming off a loss in last night and are going to be a little tired.
Yeah, definitely. Not as ripe of a spot to maybe take Franz Wagner props like we did last night. But there's plenty of opportunity. I would agree with Karis LeVert. An interesting stat. He's scored 24 or more in the last 4 games that the Pacers were home favorites, or just favorites rather, which doesn't happen that often, obviously. But it's interesting about their overs and the differences in their in the total and how they play the total essentially when they're favorites. You mentioned 16-7 to the over. When they're home favorites, 11-4 to the over. When they're underdogs overall, 11-17 to the over. And when they're home dogs, 5-5. So everything seems to be when they're favored, they go over and they score points against bad teams, even if they are pretty slow, choppy teams like Orlando. So I think we missed a bit of that really great value boat that sailed at 221 in terms of the total for this game. Obviously, you need to stay on these lines pretty much as they're coming out the night before to try to see what if there's any value right off the bat before things get bet like this game did, getting bet all the way up to 226. Don't love it. Not too. I would still consider a teaser here, mostly just because I want to get that total down a bit since I feel so pissed that I missed it, and I would like to buy a couple points to still get it. But I would still feel good about Indiana, except for they aren't very good against Eastern Conference teams. I believe they've lost 10 in a row against Eastern Conference opponents. Obviously, some of those opponents aren't the Magic, right? We're talking about a good Hornets team, a Celtics team on D, the Nets when they still had KD, the Bulls, the Hornets again. They did beat a Pistons team. But yeah, you're talking about that was the last Eastern Conference win, rather, I should say, is the Pistons. So in that time frame, you've got a lot of good teams that they're coming up against and losing. You mentioned to me that their strength of schedule seemed like it was incredibly high. It is actually since the All-Star, or not the All-Star break, since 2022 started. Their strength of schedule is in the top 5 as far as hardest in the league. And that's partly because they had a ton of good Eastern Conference teams to go through in that time frame, and this is not one of those teams. As we talk about the Magic, who they've stuck around against underdogs. Against the Pacers when they are underdogs. They've actually covered 6 of the last 7 spreads in that situation, but 4 of those games were also in Orlando. But a little bit different at home for them, where they're, as we mentioned, on the road 6-23 and getting beat by an average of more than 7 points. So I think if you want the teaser just because of the total, that's the only reason I'd take it, because I'm not worried about that 3.5 point spread, which thankfully has been bet the other way than what I'm feeling in terms of Orlando. People's taking them, and the second leg of that back to back, not feeling it tonight for them, feeling points for Indiana, and at the very least would feel good about them and their team total tonight as well, which I think sits at about, what are we at, 112-ish now, so 113, maybe a little higher at this point since the spread did go up, but I would still feel pretty good about them getting their points against Orlando tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the home numbers for Indiana in their last 6 home games. They have an offensive rating above 117 in every game except against those Suns and Celtics, who I mentioned are locked in defensively. They score a lot more efficiently at home, to say the least. And Orlando has just straight up lost 18 of their last 21 road games. Their 3 surprising wins that I mentioned against the Bulls and Mavericks and Pistons are all at home recently. I don't think that they'll be able to keep pace necessarily with the Pacers, who are playing at that much faster tempo. So yeah, at 226, I'm not really counting on a combined total. That's why I would angle towards the Pacers scoring.
Yeah,
I think it's 114 at this point, but as I mentioned, yeah, they're averaging 114.7 without Turner. And in this 7-game sample size, scoring very efficiently, playing at a fast pace, getting to the line, and they're 9-4 to the over when they have a rest advantage. That's more about them than the opposition. Orlando, it's still a small sample size in terms of them playing this faster style and scoring more, but so I'm going to still kind of wait and see in terms of seeing, can they get into shootouts consistently, or are they just freewheeling right now? And that's why I'm just going to target the Pacers to win first and foremost. Let's make that clear. Like, just take the Pacers spread right now. Maybe take their team total if you want, but I think -3.5 is too small for a team that's much better than the visiting team that's coming in on a back-to-back.
Totally. Yeah, no, totally agree with that. I mean, you look at Indiana at home, we mentioned all these overs when they're favored, especially. Their offensive rating is much higher at home, obviously about 113 at home versus about 107 on the road. But that defensive rating at home is also worse than on the road, sitting about 113 with a slightly faster pace as well, which is why you see these games go over. So, yeah, I think Indiana at home, we're all saying the same thing here. And there's no reason to overthink this one. Yeah, Orlando's not very, or, the Pacers have not been very good overall this year, but have you seen the Magic play with their 11 wins? So I think we can bank on that for the Pacers tonight. And that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Jump in the other couple videos we have up for you today. And until we see you next, happy betting.